What's up, everybody? My name is Sam Darden, known as Sammy Darden. Make sure you subscribe, turn your post notification bells on, leave a friend comment down below. Make sure you give me a big thumbs up, and make sure you leave a friendly comment. And let's get this video on the road. And comment down below what other videos I should react to. Comment down below. I need your guys' help. What other videos I should react to? Comment down below. Let's get this video on a big thumbs up. Let's get this video on the road. Let's do this. I'm doing a 3 chilling Halloween stories compilation. Let's go. Completion.
Number 1.
Whoa.
I thought it would be kind of fun to share a spooky event that happened to me a few years ago around Halloween. I had just moved to my current flat in Rains Park, southwest London, and I was fairly unfamiliar with the area. Now my current bosses and supervisors know that I'm fighting a losing battle when it comes to the reliability of the Southwest trains, and as a result have less than reliable timekeeping when it comes to arriving to work on time. A battle that I had hoped to circumvent with the purchase of a bicycle. Sadly, though, the London weather and my inherent idleness jointly conspired to once again force me to take the trains to and from work. While some people are more than aware that the trains keep me from arriving to work on time, not many of you are aware of the troubles I have returning home. That is to say, I have many a time found myself stuck at Clapham Junction with no train to take me back to Rains Park. In these circumstances, I have to take a bus to Wimbledon Common and walk the remaining 3 miles on foot. It is actually quite a pleasant walk. London doesn't have many hills if I walk along the Ridgeway. You can actually occasionally catch a nice view. True, it is of Croydon, but a nice view nonetheless. Now, to call Wimbledon Village a privileged area would be an understatement. The driveways are home to sports cars and luxury utility vehicles. So you can imagine I have very uneventful walks home. I rarely see anyone on the trip about, from the odd older couple, perhaps walking home from a late dinner party, or even a person walking their dog. The neighborhood is quiet and gets to bed early, and that night was just like the others, initially. I had gotten off the bus at the War Memorial, walked through the village center, and turned onto the Ridgeway. My phone battery had died somewhere between Wandsworth and Southfields, so I had to do the walk without music, and this always made the walk seem longer. My usual practice was to walk along and look at the houses and try to guess what the people that lived in the houses would be like. Fast car, business types, SUV and toy still in the front yard, larger family, that kind of thing. I was playing my game and decided to have a cigarette, so I stopped. I was searching for my lighter and looking around when I noticed that I was not the only one on the street. Now this was unusual but hardly alarming. What was strange, however, was that the person wasn't the sort I had grown used to seeing. It was a young lady. She appeared to be drunk, or tired perhaps. I lit my cigarette and paused for a second. Just a quick second to judge to see if she would be capable of making it home by herself. Or perhaps maybe she would need me to call someone for her. It was at this point that I realized that she was crying. I started to walk over to her to make sure she was all right. She stopped walking and immediately froze. I noticed that she was in some sort of Halloween costume. A schoolgirl, in fact. And as I got closer, I began to realize that she was in fact around the age of 15 or 16. She was deathly white. Her makeup must have been professionally done, or she had spent an incredibly long time preparing it. I began to think that maybe her friends had made fun of her costume, and she had run off from whatever party she had been at, drunk and upset. I started to feel a bit unnerved when I noticed that she was staring directly at me as I approached. I can assure you that in a city the size of London, we have an unspoken rule of avoiding eye contact with strangers at all costs. It was at this point I assumed that she was under the influence of something other than alcohol, and I decided to be a bit more cautious. I stopped about 4 or 5 feet away from her and spoke. "Are you okay? You seem to be a little upset. Are you in any sort of trouble?" Nothing from her part aside from that stare. "Have you had a little too much to drink?" Maybe some smoke? Yeah, right. I know hallucinogens when I see them. There was still no response. Do you need a taxi home? Do you remember where you live? At this, the girl began to cry, but this time, she was absolutely wailing. I could feel her raw sense of despair. I actually flinched at the sound. It was positively unbearable. She was dancing on the border of hysterics, perhaps even putting one foot along the line to see what would happen. I was stunned. I wanted to console her and run in equal measures. I wanted to comfort her and chastise at the same time. All I managed was a meek, "Why are you crying?" She must have heard me somehow, because she began to draw herself back from the edge of what can only be described as a complete breakdown. She was still heavily sobbing, but once again, she brought her eyes up to mine and said, very softly, "Because you're gonna die." Now, I've been unfortunate enough to witness death firsthand on more than one occasion. Suffice it to say that these events have always left me with a lot to think about, and I in fact have come to terms with my own mortality quite early in life. It struck me that perhaps, like too many of us had, this young lady had someone quite close to her die recently. Perhaps she was going through the same dark realizations that follow being in the company of death. The same thoughts that can keep children up at nights and the pews full at churches. I wanted to let her know that everything would be fine, and that death was simply a part of life. All I managed, however, was a slightly incredulous, "I know." At this, she seemed slightly taken aback, almost angry. She responded, "You are going to die, and he is going to kill you." Alarms went off in my head. I began to feel a bit more threatened. I decided right then and there that talking this girl down from whatever bad high she was on was no longer my responsibility. Had not the venerable Hunter S. Thompson himself warned us of the dangers of underestimating the ability of a drug to take control of a person? Good luck," I said, and with that, turned and began to walk away. After about 5 steps, I quickly looked back to see her still standing there. She put her head down and began to audibly sob again. I quickened my pace and shortly had walked along the natural bend in the road, leaving her out of sight. I left a bit agitated. I remember putting my headphones back in my ears and trying to listen to music from my phone, only to be reminded that it was still out of power. I was still 2 miles away from home, but at the pace I was walking, I was confident I could cover the ground in less than 20 minutes. No less than 2 minutes later, as when I first heard the shouting. It was a man's voice, layered with an excruciating sense of malice and rage.
"I am coming for you."
I couldn't quite place where the voice had come from, but it seemed as though he was at some distance behind me, on the same road, possibly from where the girl had been. I immediately realized that I was to be the victim of some sort of Halloween prank. I didn't, however, slow down. I imagined at this point that I was supposed to get scared and begin to run, and I was determined not to play along. The man yelled again, and this time he seemed to be significantly closer.
"I hate you."
Now the voice had seemed to come from somewhere close by behind me. That is to say, at the volume of the voice, I would have expected to have seen the man addressing me, but I was still very much alone on the street. I was walking quite fast, so the person yelling at me must have been running, yet I heard no other footsteps. There was obviously more than one prankster, and they had various hiding spots along the street. I quickly decided to be a rather poor sport and cut off the main road and go down Thornton Road by the Swan Pub. I hate to admit that their practical joke had gotten the better of me, and I did not want to see what they had in store for me next. I made it to the front of the second house on the street when I heard that terrible voice shout at me again.
"You are going to die."
This time the voice seemed to have come from the entrance of the street, less than 80 feet away, perhaps a last chance at scaring me before I disappeared into the darker side of the street. Since these streets were darker, I decided that I would lose no pride in starting to jog down the hill. I knew it was all probably fun and games, but the ferocity of the shouting left me worried that I could in fact be dealing with a real maniac. True, it would have been interesting to be a part of the most elaborate mugging I had ever heard of, but that voice just left me with the impression of true hatred. I didn't want to meet the person, or people rather, that could mimic and channel such malignant feelings at will. I had made it to the curve where Thornton Road becomes Thornton Road, when all of a sudden,
I will kill you.
this time the voice seemed to be directly to the right of me. He must have been hidden behind the fence of some house, or perhaps even within the house itself. I had obviously walked right into their trap. I broke into a sprint at this point. Pride be damned. I began to run quite fast, and then faster, straight downhill. At this point, I actually was starting to panic. My mind was playing terrible tricks on me, and it seemed as though the voices were all around me, constantly yelling at me, constantly screaming. Up ahead was the main road, Whirlpool Road to be precise. Well lit, busy, and I could hail a cab and be home in minutes. But the voices, the immensity.
I hate you, you coward. Die. Die. Die.
Every second, all around me, the adrenaline must have been heightening my every sense. I admit, I was scared, and it seemed as though for some reason, that terrible voice was booming off every surface on the street. It felt as though I was simultaneously running away and into a mad rage. The words felt like gusts of terrible hot wind, pushing its venomous anger at me. I couldn't take it anymore. The voice seemed to make me share that same intense anger, and I thought to myself, am I the one shouting? And I felt like a victim. I wanted to fucking kill the people who were playing this fucked up trick on me. I felt the hatred.
Time to die, coward. I hate you.
I decided to give up. In one quick moment, I decided I would stop running as fast as I could and have a cigarette and wait for these people to show themselves. I quickly stopped running and spun around. A car beeped as it raced past exactly where I would have run to had I not stopped at that exact moment. In my blind panic, I had run past the sidewalk of the main road and onto the actual road and had avoided being run down by inches. I looked up the road I had come from. Darkness. Silence. Whoever had been up there was gone now. I lit my cigarette and took a few moments to calm down. Smoking had saved my life that night. I went home after that, and nothing more happened to me. But as I was standing there trying to calm down, working through the panic and adrenaline, I seemed to remember hearing a soft whisper. Perhaps it's just my imagination, but I thought I heard a girl's voice, softly saying, "Not such a coward after all." Number 2. Halloween night. For many people it beats the Super Bowl, Christmas, and New Year's combined. As a kid from the suburbs, personally, I wasn't really a fan. I had nothing against the holiday itself, but when you grow up seeing CSI murder scenes on every lawn come October, it becomes a little too morbid. This year was the first time in a long time I was actually excited about the holiday. I had just turned 21 the month prior and had roommates who drank like fish. With a major holiday around the corner, it meant one thing: we're getting sideways. My excitement had another reason. A girl named Liz, who I had gotten close with and had developed quite a crush on, was a Halloween fanatic. She told me that she was going to the same bar as I was with her roommates, dressed as a biker gang. Guess which show? I had been crushing on her for a long time, and after much thought and encouragement from my roommates, I decided this was going to be the night. I asked her out. It was about 9 at night when me and my roommates finished getting ready. Jack, a 6'1" avid swimmer, was wearing a flannel, thick glasses, and had written, "I chopped wood before it was cool," on the blade of a fake axe. Hipster, or lumberjack, he called it. Dave, 6 foot and skinny, was wearing dirty jeans, a white t-shirt, and a trash can on his head. White trash. Finally, John, a 6'3" former football player, was wearing regular clothing with a sign around his neck that said, "Nudist on strike." My costume was a robe, a wand, and a football helmet. Fantasy football. We piled into a cab after pre-gaming with a 30-pack and made the 5-minute drive to Teddy's on the Rocks, a big building with a square bar in the middle and a stage on the opposite side of the entrance. We went through the double doors and straight to the bar. I pulled out my cell phone and texted Liz to see if she was showing up. Right as I put my phone back in my pocket, speak of the devil, there was Liz and her roommates, all leather, jeans, and attitude. They saw us and immediately made their way through the crowd. We all said our hellos and regular pleasantries before jumping into conversation. The entire time, Liz was standing close enough for me to catch a whiff of her perfume every time she turned her head. It was now or never. I asked Liz to go outside, and she followed me onto the back patio. We talked for a bit before I found the courage to pull the trigger. "So what do you think about going out sometime?" I asked, heart in throat. She cocked her head to one side. "Excuse me?" I stammered. "You know, like, go out to dinner or something." She then smiled at me. "Are you asking me on a date?" I took another deep breath. "Well, yeah." There was the longest pause in my life. Liz grinned, and then burst out laughing. "Oh, Mike, that's so cute. You honestly think you have a shot at me?" A pit formed in my chest. "What?" She tilted her head back and roared with laughter. "Come on, Mike. I'm at least an 8. And you? Well, you're a 4. If I'm feeling generous, it would never work. But that's so cute that you think it would." She cackled the entire way back into the bar. I stood there stupidly, with my heart, stomach, and jaw on the floor. I went back inside the bar. Was she drunk? This was not the Liz I had become so close with. I had no idea what had gotten into her. Me and her used to make fun of girls who were like that. The only thing I knew for certain was that one of my closest friends had finally shown her true self, and I was going to get blackout drunk. I sat at the bar, slamming back shot after shot of high-proof whiskey. The laugh was the worst part of it. I admit I'm not the best-looking guy, but still, I was motioning towards the bartender to refill my empty shooter for the I don't know what time, when I look up from my empty shot glass. Clear across the room, she was right there, leather arms wrapped around Jack's neck. The two were kissing in the middle of the dance floor. They paused for a minute so she could put her head next to his bicep. She then looked me dead in the eyes and winked. 2 betrayals in one night. I was on a roll. I just got up and left the bar. It was only a 30-minute walk back to the dorm, and the beer and whiskey combo was keeping me warm if nothing else. I wanted to pull out my phone and call Jack and curse him out, but after patting my pockets, I realized I left it at the bar. To add insult to injury, I was going up the hill to my building, trying hard to hold back the puke. I heard the sound of breaking glass. A bottle exploded in front of me, and a car rushed by with the driver screaming, "Asshole!" I got back to my dorm room and went straight to the bathroom. I closed the door and just stared at the mirror for a bit. Asshole. The driver was right. There were no other words I was calling myself, but that one seemed to fit best. I stared at myself in my costume. I looked ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I ripped everything off with angry fists as I slid down onto the bathroom floor. That's when I heard the front door open and the voices. Jack and Dave's, to be precise. "Fuck him, dude. He's a loser," Jack said. "I can't believe he actually thought he had a chance," Dave responded with a laugh. I wanted to get up and scream at them, but I just didn't have the strength. I heard them grab something, and with a slam, they left the room. For the first time in years, I cried. I know, men don't cry, but men get the girl. Men surround themselves with loyal friends, and I was shooting 3 for 4 for fake best friends. I admitted what I truly was. Nothing. I had checked out. Player 1 has left the game. Cash in your chips and go home. That was how my Halloween night went, until I finally had the intelligence to just pass out. I woke up the next morning on the cold bathroom floor. I got up and sulked out into our common room to see John lying on the couch. He looked up at me and smiled. "You dropped this at Teddy's," he said while sliding my phone across the coffee table. "Don't be mad, dude. But Dave got wasted last night and said things," he added with a half grin. "Yeah, I heard him talking," I said bitterly. "Please tell me at least I still have John." I picked up my phone and saw the green light flashing. I saw that I had new text messages. Dave asked out Holly and she said yes. He was so happy he ended up talking to Liz for a bit. "Dude talked you up like you cured cancer," he continued. I opened the text on my phone. There was 2 messages from Liz. The first was, "Can't come down tonight. Jin's having a crisis. Stop by the room later." The second message said, "We really should talk tomorrow. Lunch?" I was so enraged that I was going to smash my phone on the floor. Until I saw another text. There was a collection of, "Where are you?" messages from all of the guys and Liz's roommates. The message I was focused on was from Dave. "I got your back, dude. Just call me Brosiiden. King of the Brosian. Fuck yeah, America." I stared at the message, written in fluent drunkenese, too angry to think. I fucking heard Jack and Dave come in last night making fun of me. Liz fucking laughed in my face when I asked her out. What kind of sick shit is this? John lifted himself off the couch with a concerned, confused look. "Dude, Liz didn't go out last night. She was doing some damage control boyfriend crap with Jen. Also, Dave never came back to the room. He went straight to their room after the bar and stayed the night. There's no way. I remembered everything from last night. The laughing, the bottle. We went looking for you at the bar, but Jack left early and said he saw you walking up the hill. We figured you went to bed or something." The door opened, and a smiling, still drunk Dave stumbled in. "Well, if it isn't Desperado," he said with a laugh. I went to say something, but he cut me off. "Dude, Liz likes you. Likes you. Giggling Japanese schoolgirl crush likes you. You better get your ass looking presentable. Your blushing bride wants to sit down." He laughed again and went to the kitchen. John shook his head. "In case you don't speak Ozzy Osbourne, Liz likes you back." I stood as stupid as I had the night before, as I had thought about the night before. "I heard you and Jack," I muttered. This all made no sense. I heard them. I saw them. "Where is that motherfucker anyway?" Dave asked, as he stumbled towards Jack's room, mug of coffee firmly in hand. I stood stunned. What had happened? This had to be a prank. One of Dave's twisted jokes. My train of thought was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass. A few weeks ago, Jack was doing research on local legends for a paper. One of the stories he came across was called The Spirit's Game. Story was every year on Halloween, the dead would rise and freely roam the earth. Some of the more malevolent ones would invite the still living to play a game. It was simple. You won if you made it through what would be one of the worst nights of your life. Winners get everything they personally wish for and a lifetime of happiness. Losers join the dead. The spirits would use hallucinations, false memories, and psychological torture to try and expand their ranks. After Jack explained the rules, John and Dave agreed. Fuck that. But I thought for a moment and said, "You know what? I think I'd give it a try." Jack nodded. "Yeah, me too." That memory was playing over and over again in my mind. John frantically shook, A dead Jack. Vomit covered his flannel shirt, and his skin was ash gray. Dave was down the hall, screaming and pounding on the RA's door. I stared at the body of my friend. My loyal to the end friend. A half-empty bottle of vodka laid on its side, mixing with a turned-over bottle of Percocet. Jack had just as bad of a night as I had, but while I was laying down on the bathroom floor, he decided to self-medicate. On the floor of his room, liquor mixed with the pills in the same way it did in his stomach. Player 2 has left the game. No. Number 3. My cousin Ethan and I grew up together, but I never liked him very much. His family was rich, so he always had the best stuff. Mine wasn't, and I didn't. On Halloween of 1985, we were going trick-or-treating together. I was the Terminator. He was Freddy Krueger. His mask cost almost $100, and it looked exactly like Freddy's face. The scars, the sneers, everything was just right. I didn't have a mask. My parents couldn't afford one. I had torn aluminum foil taped to the side of my face. It was meant to look like the Terminator after some skin had been ripped off. A few splotches of ketchup on the foil were supposed to look like blood. As soon as it dried, it looked very little like dried blood, and very much like dried ketchup. Despite my terrible costume, I was still excited to trick or treat. We didn't have candy very often at home, except maybe on Easter. My parents encouraged me to go to as many houses as I wanted, to get all the candy I would be able to eat. It felt good to know they wanted me to be happy. Ethan and I went out at sundown and visited house after house. Every time the homeowners would gush over Ethan's mask, they would tell him how scary it was, how realistic. Then they would turn to me and ask me who I was supposed to be. I would answer, and then they would say something like, "Oh, of course. How could I have missed it?" I could tell they felt sorry for me. One even handed me a few extra pieces of candy. When we were done, our pillowcases were stuffed with treats of every sort. We began the long walk back home. As we went, Ethan rooted around his bag of loot. I could hear him grumbling and complaining through his mask. Then he started throwing candy on the street, stuff he didn't like.
Go ahead and pick it up if you want it, Bill. I know you can't afford to let anything go to waste.
He called out, heaving handful after handful into the gutter. I didn't say anything, but I reached into my pocket and pulled out a lighter and 2 cigarettes I had stolen from my dad. I had been smoking on and off for the last few months. Even at 13, I knew it was bad for me. I just didn't care. It made me feel good. I stayed a few steps behind Ethan as he tossed more candy away. As much as I hated myself for it, I ended up picking up a few pieces off the ground and putting them in my bag. Ethan caught me once and laughed.
You're gonna be as fat as your mum if you eat all that.
I kept my mouth shut.
Is that why she got fired from the restaurant? Did she eat a customer's food?
I knew Ethan was joking, as he did often. I'm sure in his mind he thought he was being harmless and playful. Still, I told him more than a few times to leave my mom out of the jokes. She had diabetes, and she hadn't mentioned it to anyone other than my dad and me, but the doctor told her that she might end up losing her foot. That's why the restaurant had to let her go. She couldn't walk around and wait tables anymore. "Change the subject, Ethan," I said. I knew he heard me, and he didn't talk for another minute or so, until he did again.
Hey, you think her and your dad still fuck? I wonder how he even manages to get it in there.
He cackled, then insisted.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done. Promise.
I seethed as we took a shortcut through the elementary school soccer field.
Let's stop here for a minute.
Ethan said. We had gotten to the school's playground.
I bet I could scare the shit out of some kids if they come by.
He sat on one of the swings, with his pillowcase on his lap. He kicked his legs, and the swing moved back and forth. I stood there, hating him. "I think I see some kids coming over the hill," I told Ethan. I'm going to hide behind the slide and sneak up on them if they come over to you.
Go for it.
Ethan told me, his voice deep and distorted through the mask. I left Ethan on the swing set and walked over to the slide. I watched him on the swing as his hateful words rang in my ears. Tears came to my eyes as I remembered my mom smiling from her spot on the couch as she encouraged me to go out and have fun. She was such a good person. She never said anything negative about Ethan. In fact, she always complimented him on his grades and his wins in basketball and even his looks. You're going to be a handsome man someday, Ethan, she told him. I bet we'll see your face in a magazine someday. Even after her kindness, Ethan still felt it was okay to trash her. I heard him laughing to himself across the playground. I didn't know why exactly, but I thought I had a pretty good idea. I reached in my jacket pocket for another cigarette, knowing the smoke would calm me down. But it had come apart. My pocket was full of loose tobacco and paper, and the lighter. Ethan was still laughing as I fingered the lighter in my pocket for a second. Then I pulled it out. I walked up behind him. Ethan didn't know I was there, as he shouted.
Okay, one more thing, and I'll never say anything about her again. But unless your dad's got a big dick, he'll never manage to.
I flicked the lighter near the back of Ethan's neck, right where his hair and the mask met. The hair went up quickly, using his hairspray as an accelerant. Then something happened I didn't expect. The mask burst into flames. Ethan jumped off the swing and ran in a loose circle, trying to pull the mask off his head. I saw it ripping under his fingers. He couldn't get a grip. The material bubbled. His screams barely muffled as the molten chemicals clung to his skin, echoing off the brick walls of the elementary school. After a few seconds, he fell and rolled around on the playground, pushing his head into the sand to try to put out the fire. He succeeded, but the damage was done. He turned over on his back, no longer screaming, but gasping and shallow hyperventilated breaths. In the moonlight, I saw the mask was completely fused to what remained of his skin. One of his eyes had completely burst, but his other darted around, almost like he was confused and wondering where he was. I saw something moving on the other side of the field. Kids were coming. I yelled to them to call an ambulance, and I waited, unsure of how I felt, until the paramedics got there. I took complete responsibility for setting Ethan on fire. I said I had been sneaking up to scare him by flicking the lighter near his face. And yes, I got into a lot of trouble, but everyone believed it was an accident. Ethan's face was destroyed. He had skin grafts and bone grafts and all sorts of reconstructive surgery, but he never recovered, not physically or emotionally. He killed himself in 1990. His parents held a very expensive funeral. I was invited. They had forgiven me for my part in his accident years before. In fact, their subsequent lawsuit against the mask company is the reason why Halloween masks are now made with flame-retardant materials. My mom died a few years before Ethan, but not before complications from her diabetes took her left leg. Dad and I were with her in the hospital. At the same time, Ethan's parents were there to see him through another round of reconstructive surgery. They visited Mom, Dad, and I while Ethan was still recovering after a successful set of grafts. We chatted for a while about Mom's hopes for recovery, and then the topic moved to Ethan. Ethan's mom was gushing about how a plastic surgeon had recently joined the hospital after working in Switzerland. He was the best, apparently. He had taken on Ethan's case earlier in the year, albeit remotely. He wrote a substantial article about the new techniques he would be employing. In the world of plastic surgery, it made a big splash, if only for its ambition. Ethan's mom reached into her purse and pulled out the publication. She flipped it open to the page that showed various photographs of Ethan's burns, along with notes and explanations the doctor had written to accompany the article. I could tell Mom was holding back tears. I knew why, too. Her eyes met mine, and she couldn't hold back any longer. She began to weep. Dad and Ethan's mother held her while she cried. I just watched. Mom was thinking that she had been right all those years ago. She had been right for all the wrong reasons. but right nonetheless. Just like she had predicted, Ethan's face had finally made it into a magazine.
My mom and her mom.
There's always a reason to be afraid.
If you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and comment down below what other videos I should react to. Thank you guys for watching this awesome video. I hope you guys enjoy. Leave a friend comment down below. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give me a big thumbs up and like and comment. I hope you guys have a nice day. Bye guys.